Hey guys, welcome back to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. Today's guest is James Newbury. Amongst many things, James is a 5 times CrossFit Games athlete, an Ironman, recently turned Hyrox athlete, most famously for doing the joint doubles with Tia-Clair Toomey, and has been flying the flag for plant-based athletes all around the world. So James, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on. And sorry about my tardiness. It's been mental here lately. Like it's always pretty busy, but recently it's been extra busy, which is always fun and games.
Don't be silly, mate. I mean, you were saying you've got a competition next week, right?
Yeah, we've got Brisbane Hyrox. It's kind of the last home soil throwdown Tia and I are getting a chance to have a crack at, just to not so much blow out cobwebs, but more so see where we're at and see what the last block of training since Melbourne has done for us. So we kind of want to push the boundary a little bit in this race to kind of see where things start to break. So for us, it's about putting what we've just done into practice and see if we're on the right trajectory for Chicago come June.
That's exciting. Chicago will be a hell of a trip, I'm sure. And how's the prep been for this one with yourself and Tia?
Mate, it's been amazing. I've always wanted to sink my teeth into a proper running specific program. Like I've done strength blocks before. I've done powerlifting cycles. I've done Ollie cycles. I've done gymnastics progression. And typically the running is just intertwined into each one of those blocks. It's kind of just like, okay, let's get you running to a degree, and then maybe we might ramp up certain aspects of running leading into, say, nationals or regionals, and then we might ramp it up a touch more, and more so just exposure leading up to the games. Whereas doing Hyrox, it's a running biased, running strength cycle. So everything is intertwined into making you better at running, whether it's strength running, whether it's threshold running, whether it's running slow. We didn't typically do that so structured leading up to the games. It was kind of just like, you would hit a couple of track sessions each week and you might do a longish run, and that longish run was no more than 8 to 10 Ks. Now we're doing stuff that it reminds me of barbell strength work, but in the running format. So, barbell cycling barbells, and then lifting heavy singles, heavy triples, heavy fives, and doing it in different ways, which is, to me, super exciting because I get to do something that I haven't done before in the fitness space.
True.
To a degree that allows me to compete at a world stage. So it's cool.
It's cool because your history, I mean, when I did the intro, like all the things that you've done, I mean, you're putting yourself down like you've never done a running block before. You have done an Ironman, so that is, and you've done. I think you did a marathon in training for that, right?
Yeah, I did. So I've done a few marathons now, and again, and it's funny. Like I've done 2 long course Ironmans and a few half Ironmans, but I didn't do a running specific block like it. I ran, but it was very loose. If I had to sum up my exposure to triathlon and Ironman training, this is what I did. I would criterium cycle once on a Tuesday night, which is a 45-minute hard out bike ride, and it was that was my lactic threshold session.
Jeez.
I would do a commute to the gym on my bike, and it was about 12 kilometers to the gym, 12 kilometers home, and I'd do that maybe 2 to 3 times a week. So that was kind of like my low aerobic, broken up into 2, roughly 20, 25-minute bike rides. Then on the weekend, I might be lucky to get in a 90 to 2.5 hour bike ride. That was my biking. Then I would run on Sundays, and it would be a 45-minute run, and it was holding, mid 4-minute kilometers. And then I would run at my touch football game during the week. So I'd get like another kind of like lactic session happening. So I'd play touch football. That'd be a running session. I'd do a long run on a Sunday. And then my swimming, I would go join in on the local swim squad, with the 10 and 11-year-old kids at 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday night. And that would be my swimming for the week. And then if I was lucky, on a Saturday, I would try and bunch a couple of those things together. So I would
in like a brick session.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So and we would do a proper brick session. It was almost like a Hyrox session actually on a Wednesday night. So that was our so yeah, Tuesday night was our criterion. Wednesday night was called the Blood Eagle, which was essentially we would go up to this house on the top of a hill, and it was the triathlon coach's house, and he would set up this Hyrox circuit, but the 800-meter course was like a hilly loop. Then Thursday nights we'd play touch footy, and then yeah, Saturdays we would do a long bike ride, and then maybe we'd piece in maybe a swim or a run in with that. And then on Sundays, we would do a longish run. So that was kind of like how I prepared for the Ironman. So it wasn't as structured in terms of a structured running plan like I'm doing at the minute.
Yeah, that makes sense, I suppose. I guess with triathlons, there's three elements you've got to contend with, whereas Hyrox, I mean, now it's so famous and popular, people are learning that it is a running race, right? If you're a good runner, you're going to have a better chance of doing well at Hyrox. And we see that with some of the athletes coming through now. I know you're familiar with Joanna. She came on the podcast as well. I mean, she's a beast, right? She is an absolute beast, especially when it comes to the running. How much of your training has changed from the first Hyrox that you guys did together? Like how much has your training changed from that first prep now into your second prep together leading up to the World Champs?
It's definitely much more Hyrox specific. So prior to Melbourne, I was probably getting in. So the 2 weeks leading up to Melbourne, I would have done 30 to 32 Ks per week, each one of those 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I did maybe 60 Ks over 2 weeks. Prior to that, I was probably doing up to 20 kilometers for maybe 2 weeks before that. And prior to that, 10 to 15 Ks a week over 2 runs. And then outside of that, I was doing just we train at a gym here called a Tora, and I would just jump into the regular classes of a morning, so I would do that maybe 4 days a week. So it was 10 to 20 Ks of running on average, and then I would do the strength-based classes 4 days a week there. And those strength-based classes would do, you do some bench press, you do some power cleans, you do some strict pull-ups, a bit of bodybuilding, and then you might finish off the session with 10 to 20 minutes of functional conditioning. And that was pretty much it. So that's what we were doing leading up to Melbourne. And funnily enough, I was surprised with how well we ran considering the amount or the lack of kilometers we did leading up to that.
Yeah, I mean, you got a bloody good time in the mixed doubles, right?
Yeah, like it was respectable. It was respectable. And I definitely think we definitely had room to move, but I think we played it well because the last thing I wanted to do was give Tia a bad experience for her first race. And I've been lucky enough to take, I think, 5 people over my 10 races, 5 people through their first ever race, either like mixed doubles or relay. And I've had a really good time doing that. So I definitely wanted to make sure her experience was good, but she pushed the pace. Probably a touch more than what I wanted in the first half of the race. And then we kind of brought it home really well. And the average split was good. And we were happy with the time, but we finished and looked at each other and thought, do you reckon we could have gone faster? And we did think to ourselves, yeah, there's probably a bit of room to move, but that's good because it definitely allows us to know that not even with any extra training, we probably could have gone a bit quicker, but with a block of training, we're guaranteed to go faster, minus any crazy hiccups.
Yeah.
So now looking at the training block, in terms of volume, the volume is way higher than what we ever expected to do, and it's way higher than what I've ever done in my life in terms of running. But then outside of that, the accessory pieces intertwined, very, very specific. It's, making sure we have a strategy for our sled pull, sled push, making sure we know how we want to transition on and off. And it's very much coming down now to how do we refine our transitions and what parts do we take more of. So not only are we working on the base aerobic fitness and our threshold running, but we're also working on the elements of the race where we excel, where we kind of suck, and then who can take more of this to make us faster as a pair. So that's been the fun part. We get together once a fortnight and we throw down and we see where we're at. And every time we come back every fortnight, it's almost like newbie games when you first go to the gym. You're just like, wow, when we first started this, we were running, out at Tia's farm. there's a pretty rough track. Well, it's a fantastic running track. It'd be a dream, but it makes it hard, especially when you've got a headwind. And I remember out there when we first did our first session together, we'd be hard pressed running 430s, 425s, and now we're running 30, 40 seconds faster than that with better form. So there's definitely been some progression since Melbourne.
I think I've really enjoyed that about my running journey as well. And anyone that is starting running, it's you see progression very clearly. And if you're just starting as well, like you're one of the world's best athletes, and even you hadn't done a proper inverted commas running block, and even your progression has been incredible. Whereas you'd normally in other areas probably be looking around like the 1 or 0.1% improvements that you're right at the top of your game now. But even when you're hitting a new running block, you're looking at 5-10% improvements in a small period of time, which is what I love about running if you're just getting started.
Oh, 100%. And I think one of the most fascinating things about this is I've had the chance to do 98% of this training with my girlfriend, who's getting ready for her first open solo. And her progression has been wild, but not even just from a fitness point of view, but from a technical point of view. Her running looks much cleaner. She's found that natural flow. She can recover from being buried and then bring it back. And this is coming from someone 12 months ago who went out to do her first 5K run with me from the better part of like 2 years prior to not running at all. She would break up a 5K into 2.5 kilometer sections, and she would need a break for 5 minutes in between. Now, this morning we went out for a trot and she did a 14K without stopping at a 5:30 pace.
Unreal.
And the progression, and she talked the whole way. She was in a good zone. And this is off the back of yesterday. She ran 20Ks yesterday. She did a 12K in the morning, and then she did a simulation at nighttime. So the progression is thick and fast. And for anyone who is getting into running, make sure you take mental notes on how you feel doing each session, because you will see some tangible results that will fire you up to continue. And they're there. And whether you feel like you're getting better or not, you are getting better.
For sure. I mean, that's what they say. What gets tracked gets improved, right? It's I'm on a very similar journey with my wife as well. And she's more of a yogi and like wellness focused. And in the last kind of probably 5 months, we've really got into a gym program together. And that's not us training together, but I'll train her twice a week as part of our routine. And before you know it, she's clocked up 40 sessions in the gym. And I love it because the app will pop up and say, oh, that's your 40th session. But I'm like, it's important. You need to track these numbers. And that's not just for elite athletes. That's for anyone, whatever you're doing, especially health and fitness wise, because it's very easy just to stay focused of your current times or your current scores, when if you take a bigger picture on things, like 6 months ago, this is where I was, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it's like, oh, give yourself a pat on the back sometimes. It's pretty special what people can do.
Absolutely. And this is the whole thing with anything that you're striving towards, whether it's within your fitness or whether it's within your business. You look at the numbers and you're just like, wow, we've gone from here to here. I remember in January of 2024, I went out with a friend of mine, a content creator, absolute legend of a bloke, Vakey, and he said, hey, mate, I'm going to run a flat stick 5K. Do you want to come with me? And I said, yeah, no worries. I'll come out and do it. And at that point in time, I think I just lifted weights for the better part of 3 months and I had done zero running. And I jumped in and I did it. And I ran, I think I was in the hurt locker. I ran a 19:02
wow.
5K.
That's really good considering you'd weights for 3 months.
Yeah, I was not in a good way. I think I ran the first 2.5K pretty flat stick, and then the last 2.5K I just suffered and kicked stones the whole way. Yeah, I was just like, just buckle up and hold on, and I did not feel good after that. But coming back from that, we recently just tested a 10K, and I ran two 19:07s back to back in a 10K without any break. And so that's the progression. And that's like 12 months later, I can now run the same split I did for a 5K. I can run it over 10. And and that back then, that was a 10 out of 10 5K, like 10 from 10. I couldn't have gone any harder. Like I had nothing left. And this 10K that I recently just did was a 7 out of 10 effort. So
Wow.
it goes
I
to
love that.
show, yeah, it goes to show a really cool progression. And I all my life, I've been interested in those types of progressions. I like to see that. That's what fires me up.
I love that. Um, I want to talk quickly about so back to the Hyrox stuff. You and Tia going for the World Championships. When it was announced that you and Tia were going to partner up together and do this first competition, it was kind of everywhere, all over the Hyrox social media for sure. Naturally, because you're both CrossFit legends, and Tia in particular has won CrossFit how many times? Seven
So,
times? Seven
yeah.
times fittest woman in the world, which is insane, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys feel any pressure going into that first event together?
No, I didn't. I don't think Tia did either. The way that I explained it to her when I first asked her, which was the day after the CrossFit Games just gone, we went and got coffee before we flew out. And I said, "Hey, you got to run a Hyrox with me next." And she goes, "Huh, yeah, okay, sounds good." And then a couple of months later, she said, "Hey, think I want to run one. When do you want to do it?" And I said, "How about Melbourne?" And I said, "Look, it's just a fun thing. It's something that you don't have any pressure. We can just go
Mm,
out. We can have a good time. You don't even have to train for it. Literally, just let's go out and let's get it done and do something that's not, you know, a high stakes, everyone expects you to win
mm,
type deal." And I think was intriguing because once you do a sport for so long, and especially in a sport that you are dominating, you're expected to go out and put on a show. And you also want to put on a show, right? You want to do really well. So going into this, I think we just let go leading up to this. We let go of all the pressure of, you know, doing, going out and winning. And it was more
mm.
so go out and have a lot of fun. And then 5 minutes before the start line, she says to me, she's like, "We've got to fucking win this shit." And I was like, "Yeah, we do." And so we put our best foot forward and we went out and had a good hard crack. And I think the thing is the atmosphere at the Hyrox events have fired her up so much that when we did get a spot for Worlds, I'm just like, "Are you keen?" She goes, "Yeah, man, I'm in." So hey, I'm all about people having fun and doing fitness, and so having fun and doing something hard together is, I think, a really good way to, you know, create new memories and have fun and share the experience. Like it's all good and well, you know, you can go sit on a roller coaster and have fun, but I feel so much more connected with someone when you go and do something hard.
For sure.
When you're in the
When you're
pain
in the
cave.
hurt locker, yeah, when you're in a hurt
Yeah,
locker, it's different. You have a different bond as well. Like you
yeah,
all know from like going playing sport growing up. My background is in professional rugby, actually in the UK. I know, yeah, you used to play when you were younger, and it's hard to describe. It's hard to explain to people that don't have that kind of background or aren't interested in that stuff, because you can have a bond with people doing things and having good memories, but when you're really in the pits, you know, when you're really backs against the wall and there's only one way out, that's like proper core memories, bonding experiences.
yeah. That's the camaraderie that you get from doing something tough as a team or as a pair or as a group. It's just there's something about it, and if you haven't experienced it, there's nothing stopping you from going out and joining just a local club doing something,
Mm,
badminton, volleyball, touch footy, whatever it may be, but going and doing something that, you know, gets you fit, gets you active, gets you healthy, and you're going towards this common goal as a group. There's nothing like it, which is why even if you're in an individual sport like a, you know, Hyrox solo or CrossFit Games individual, you have a team around you and you're still doing it as a team. And that's
yeah,
why Tia and Shane have done so well, because they do it so well as a team. It's not Tia going to the CrossFit Games, it's Tia and Shane and the
yeah,
proven
for sure.
community going to the CrossFit Games, which is, you know, I've always felt like, and you're probably the same, being rugby background, anyone playing contact sports or team sports, you will go so much harder for your teammates
For
to make
sure.
sure that you can give them a break. Like I would always make sure I was fit as fit could be. So if my teammates need me to make the next 4 tackles in a row because they're in the hurt locker, I could, and I
Mm,
would, and I would feel good about it. And they knew that I was doing that for them. And you feel good about giving them, you know, the better part of 30 seconds break.
yeah. It's something special about giving your absolute all for people you care about. But I think that's irrespective of sport, you know, like there are lessons to be had from sport, but in other areas of life, like when you're in a couple, or, you know, you're married, or your family, when you give your all, it's not 50-50, you know, it's 100-100, you know, you're giving your all, expecting nothing back. And I think stuff like that is pretty special, and good lessons from sports, which is why I would always recommend people to just go down, as you say, go down your local sports club, or go to your local Hyrox, go to your local gym, sign up to a gym class. Like, it's just that camaraderie is hard to replicate, I find, in other aspects of life, or it's just easier in sports.
Yeah, I agree. And it's even funny, like Loz, my girlfriend, and I, we've done 3 mixed doubles together, and every time she's gotten better and better and better. But in the beginning, she had never done a competitive race in anything before. I think the last time she jumped into a pool she would maybe been 11 or 12 years old, and that was the last time she ever did a race. So for us to do something tough together and to get through it together, and she could say, James, I really need you to take this sled. I'd be like, yeah, let's freaking go. I'll take this sled as long as you need me to take this sled. And you work hard for each other. But yeah, it's a fun thing. You great memories, good bonding. And that's how I like to spend my time. And, you know, lots of people are different, and lots of people like to spend their time, you know, going on holiday and sitting on a beach and watching the sunset. Like, I like to do that too. But I also get best kicks out of doing harder things, like, you know, going on a tough hike, or going on a tough run, or,
for sure,
you know, playing sport.
I love I mean, I'm a huge fan of your content, James, by the way, especially your YouTube stuff. Like, I've been going down the YouTube rabbit hole in the last kind of 6 months myself. And I mean, first of all, your content makes me want to move to Australia. It's it's just like, you're like, oh yeah, the beach is 150 meters down the road. I'm like, fuck, man, that sounds unreal. Get a little surf in. But your whole lifestyle and everything that you kind of represent and project is health, wellness, and it's not you pushing it. It's just, you know, things that you like to do. And I liked from your documentary about your Ironman that you did, which was on your YouTube, which was fucking great video, by the way, really well done.
Thank you.
I really want to talk about your recovery from your bike accident.
Yeah.
Because that caught me by surprise, because the title was just about you doing an Ironman. And then it kind of threw a spanner in the works in the video. It's like, oh, I've just had this huge bike accident, mountain biking. I was like, oh, fuck, I wasn't expecting the doco to turn like this.
Nah.
So talk us through, if you could talk us through the accident first, and kind of what happened. I know it was a while ago for you, but I found it really interesting. And I also then just want to talk about the things that you mentioned in the documentary of your recovery process from that, in order to be in shape for the Ironman.
Easy. Yeah, no problem. I remember it like yesterday. So yeah, no problem. So essentially, we were taking one of those Saturday ride sessions, getting ready for the Ironman, and we actually flipped it. Now, I said to everyone, hey, let's go for a road ride, everybody. And one of the boys wrote back, no, let's go for a mountain bike instead. And I said, yeah, sounds great. I'll have to borrow a mountain bike. I don't have a mountain bike at the moment. So we've gone out mountain biking. Someone called last run, which is never what you want to do when you go mountain biking, last run, and then it just jinxed everyone. But I've come down the hill and I've just overshot a turn, and I've gone over the back of the turn. And as I was really trying to protect the bike, and the bike was not mine. It was worth the better part of $6,000 or $7,000. And so I kind of tried to get the bike out of the way of the tree that was in front, and I wound up going over the handlebars, and I hit my head at the base of the tree, and then kind of like rolled up my back up the tree. And it wasn't even a tree. It probably sat at about hip height, but it had a broken branch at the base, which got stuck right on top of my spine. And it did pierce the skin, and it's still got a pretty good scar there. But basically what it did is it carved off 2 of my spinal processes. It punctured my lung. I had a pneumothorax, so a slightly collapsed lung. And then I broke, I think it was 6 ribs. And then, I had a pretty decent concussion. But I remember looking and seeing black. As soon as I hit this tree, it was just a heavy hit. It's kind of like getting the wind knocked out of you playing football, taking a hit, a blindsided hit. That's kind of what it felt like. And I hit the deck, opened my eyes. I just couldn't see anything. It was just black. And I thought, I had a pretty nasty spill here. and I'm like lying down, and I'm like kind of like just almost like stunned on the ground, and I couldn't, trying to like pick my arms up from the side, and I could feel that I could move them, but to like kind of pull my arms back, that was really, really hard. I was like, oh, I've done some damage here. Like I'm in a spasm of some sort, and I could barely breathe. So I could only kind of suck in little bits of air. Anyway, I've stood up eventually after about 10, 15 minutes. The boys have come around and they're just like, you okay? You okay? You got to get up, man. You got to get up. Anyway, I was like, yep, let's go home. So I walked out of there. At this point in time, I thought I just had a head knock. And I jumped in the car, and one of the boys said, are you feeling okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Just drop me home. I'll be right. And then his wife was a nurse, and he called her and said, James has come off his bike pretty bad. What should he do? And she said, hey, James. And I was like, hey, Amanda. And she goes, oh, you don't sound well. Go to the hospital. So they took me to the hospital, and yeah, I got in there. I'm sitting in emergency for maybe 3 hours, and they said, what's the pain? And I said, oh, it's probably a 5 out of 10. It's a 5 out of 10 if I sit still. If I start to move, it's like a 10 out of 10. And so I just sat there and sat there and sat there, and eventually I got a scan, and they come in and they said, move him into this room, do this, put him on oxygen, blah, blah, blah. And they saw that I had a punctured lung, and I chipped a couple of bones out of my back pretty good and whatnot. And then, yeah, it was the ribs that were the worst. So this happened 5 weeks out from the Ironman, and I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like going through. I'm like, okay, they said pneumothorax and they said punctured lung, and I thought, okay, yeah, cool, yep. And then there's like a couple of cracked ribs and blah, 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 and you look like you've taken off T2, T3 spinal processes. Here they are, they're like chipped and blah, blah, blah. So if you're going to break your back, probably the best way to break your back, there wasn't any like structural vertebrae like shifted to like pinch the spinal cord or anything like that. But it was mainly the lungs and everything else, and the back was really stiff and tight. And so I'm sitting there and I'm asking the doctor, I was like, okay, cool, I've got to do an Ironman. I've just convinced the better part of 20 people from my gym to come and hit this Ironman in Perth with me in 5 weeks' time. Am I going to be able to go and do that race? And they said, absolutely not. You're not doing any Ironman race. Like, to get that out of your head, that's 5 weeks away. You will be laying up for the 6 weeks. And
so their recommendation was just laying still for 6 weeks.
Pretty well. They just said, you got a PlayStation,
Damn.
Just sit back, relax, and take a load off. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that.
Me.
No, that's not going to happen. I was like, okay, I'll take your advice. So I'm in hospital for 5 days. I'll get out on the 5th day. And as soon as I get out of there, I get home, and I'm just like, well, before I left, I said, what can I do? And they said, you can kind of walk around, but lay up. You can do anything that doesn't really hurt more than a 5 out of 10. And I was like, great. So I took that as I can train up to a 5 out of 10. So as soon as I got home, I jumped on the bike and I sat in TT position, and I just ticked the bike over for an hour when I got home. So on day 5. And so this is now getting into the protocols that kind of helped me get back and get ready for that race. So
yeah,
there's a few things here and there's probably a hierarchy of what I think helped the most. And this is, don't take, I'm not a doctor. So
yeah. Take not medical advice, guys.
No, it's not medical advice, but I was cleared for anything spinal related. It was kind of just like, it was very painful. I went home, I started ticking over on the bike straight away. If I moved, it was extremely painful. So I had to
move like twisted, like side to side.
Yeah, I had to stay completely still. So even like walking, I had to turn my whole body.
Okay.
It was very stiff, very stiff. And I could only breathe at that point. Probably if you were to take a full inhale, I could probably get to about... Hey, sorry, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Sorry, it's gone blank on my side.
It's all right. I've still got everything still running.
Okay, cool.
But if you wait till you can see us.
Yeah, 1 second. I think there we go. Hold on.
No worries.
There we go. We're back.
We're back.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, all good. So basically, I got home, jumped on the bike, did about an hour of running, hour of cycling, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this feels probably about a 5 out of 10, but it was more so the breathing. So I could probably only breathe into about 30% at that point. So I would take a breath and it would get stuck. And it felt like something in my ribs was like stopping me from breathing in. So I could probably only breathe up to about 30%, maybe even a little bit less, probably 25% before it got to a point where it was too painful. So I kind of had to shallow breathe on the bike. Then the next day, I jumped back on the bike and I did the same thing, but I did it for 2 hours. The next day, day 3, I did 3 hours. Day 4, I did 4 hours. Day 5, I did 5 hours. And so on that day, essentially day 10 from the accident, I was up to a 5-hour bike ride, and I could sit there and
fucking hell.
And it was okay. It was a bit painful, probably 6 out of 10 pain. Intertwined into those first 5 days out of hospital, I was not only riding the bike, but I was also going down to the beach, which was, again, 150 meters from my house. I would get in the water, I would get wet, I would get sunlight, I would try and touch ground as much as I could with bare feet. And if there was even a woo-woo type spiritual protocol to follow, but it potentially had some merit to help me get better for this Ironman, I was going to do it. I had time. I didn't have the luxury of, chucking a 10-hour, I was doing 10-hour training weeks prior to that. I didn't have the luxury to train for 10 hours doing my proper swims and my proper runs and whatever else I was doing, playing touch footy and criterium. So I was like, I will spend the time now. And I also wasn't working at the gym at the time because I was at home fixing this back. So I was like, I'm going to put all my effort into fixing this back as quick as possible. I'm going to use natural remedies to help. So I was downing turmeric, I was having ginger, I was, having these shots, these jamu shots that we had in Bali. I was making them at home, but I was getting in contact with the earth as much as I could. I was getting in the ocean twice a day. I was jumping in my sauna at home. I was doing a sauna protocol morning and night. I was jumping in my ice bath as best as I could. It was very hard to get in the ice bath, but I was getting in there. I was sitting in a magnesium bath as well. So I'd get in a float tank. If you guys are familiar with float tanks, I had a float tank at my house, I had this full recovery suite at the house.
I was going to say, it sounds like your recovery suite is unbelievable, state of the art.
Yeah, I don't have that now, but I did set up a room. We had a spare room, which we used for the foster animals at the time, and we converted it into a partial foster area, but also a recovery room. So I had this bath, and it was really cool. And I loved floating. I've always loved floating. So I'd get in the float tank. I would sit there and I'd float. So it took a lot of the pressure off my back. But you're also soaking up magnesium. But then I also used as an opportunity to detach from any distraction, and I could visualize my back healing. I could visualize my ribs, the bones healing together, and I could visualize my lungs healing, and all the things that I knew that were wrong. I just pictured them in my mind to get better and to heal. And again, whether there's any merit to it or not, I did the Ironman 5 weeks later, and I was back in the pool on day 11. So I have to say that everything that I did contributed to me healing well. On top of those things, on top of those protocols, so on top of the sunlight, the earthing, the ocean, the sauna, the ice bath, the float tank, I was trying to eat as much as I could. I was loading up on vitamin C because I know that helps with healing as much as possible. What else was I doing?
What about sleep?
I think that I was sleeping and the sleep. And the sleep was obviously the sleep is the number one. Trying to get a nap in each day and sleeping really well. So making sure my room was completely dark, silent, clean, temperature controlled, all those types of things to enhance recovery. Essentially what you would do if you're an elite athlete, prepping for an event because you break your body down every day. But I was just transitioning it into healing a broken back and some punctured lung. So I did that, and I think on day 9 or day 10, I tried to go for a run, but the impact and the jolting was painful. I think I made it 200 meters down the street and I had to call it quits. But then I was like, I wonder if I could jump in the pool and kind of like stiff twist to each side. And on day 11, I jumped in the pool and I swam a kilometer and it was fine. It was very slow, but I could do it without too much pain. Then a really fascinating thing happened between day 10 and day 12. Can't remember when it was, one of those days. I remember going down to the ocean, and at this point, each day after that, from basically 25% breath in or inhale
breath
on
capacity
day 5.
or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it was basically improving by about 5% each day as it came. On that day 10, day 12, it was probably about 50%. I could probably breathe into halfway and I'd have to stop it, cut it short. I remember a wave coming in. I was out in the water and I was probably at about hip height. And I remember I saw this wave coming. It was a flat day and it came out of nowhere, this rogue wave. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't run. It's too painful. I can't do anything about this wave coming. If I get hit by this wave, it's going to be excruciating. And I did a few things by accident out of natural habitual habit, go to catch something that's falling and go, I get stuck and be really like 10 out of 10 pain straight away. And I remember just thinking, sink under the water, take a breath in, sink under the water and just go with the flow and just take it as it comes and try and get underneath it. As I did that, I sucked in a bit of a breath, but I completely forgot that I couldn't breathe in all the way. And as I did it, I kind of like hunched over, fell underneath the water, fell underneath this wave, and I felt this huge pop, like it's like the biggest back crack that you've ever had in your life. I had kind of like in the middle, like on my sternum and in my back at the same time. And I went and I just thought under the water, I was like, all this calmness happened. And I was like, what was that? I was like, either I'm about to be in some serious pain here or I'm going to be able to take a full deep breath. And I stood up and I could take 100% breath straight away, 50% to 100. It was the best feeling ever.
Unreal.
After 10 days of being restricted on breath, it was amazing. So basically, once all this kind of came to fruition, I could take a deep breath again. I could get in the pool. I think by about day 13, 14, I could go for a slight jog. On day 15, I came back to get my 2-week scan. And the 2-week scan showed my bones had healed, my spinal processes were all good, my lungs looked good. They're just like, wow, it's been 2 weeks. What's going on? What have you been doing? And I was just like, well, I haven't been sitting down playing PlayStation for the last 2 weeks. I can tell you that right now. I've been moving as much as I can that allowed me. I've been eating good food. I've been getting out. I've been doing all these different things. And they just said, great, keep going, do what you do. And that's
crazy. That's crazy that they like prescribe this amount of time. Again, not medical advice. They're the professionals. But then they're happy with the progression, and that's insane.
Yeah, and I think they always come from it out of a let's be safe.
For sure. They have to be. You never know. Like, I mean, you hear some shocking horror stories with like medical professionals and liability and insurance and all that sort of stuff. You're like, fair enough. They've got to cover their own backs.
Yeah, and I think at that point in time, I was like, I know my body really well. I know what hurts. I know what pain is. I can understand where the limit is drawn, and I want to do the race. So I'm not going to take myself to a point where this is going to inhibit me doing the race. I'm going to take it to a point where it gives me the best chances of just going and get the thing done.
Yeah.
And so that's where I had it. And then on day 18, I want to say, it was day 18 or day 17, we did a half Ironman as a roll around tester, and it was fine. Or maybe even day 21, somewhere in that vicinity there. I think 3 weeks after I did a half Ironman as a sim with the crew, and completely fine. And I think I did it in maybe 5 hours or something like that.
Jeez, what a story, man! That is crazy. And so, I mean, first of all, this is in your documentary on your YouTube. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It is such a great 55-minute or so watch on YouTube. So those things that you break down, so 5 weeks after you managed to complete a fucking full Ironman, and then you break down those little things there as to why you think that contributed to your recovery, or at least gave you those, best chance to recover. Yep. How, if you had to rank like the most important one out of those, which one would it be?
If you were to take sleep away out of that category,
so I'd sleep for you is number one.
Sleep's number one. Yeah, sleep is number one. All the healing, all the good stuff happens while you're sleeping. So if you can figure out a way to get complete, deep, rested sleep, that is going to be the number one for any type of training plan. 100%.
And how do you do that? If you had to recommend to people now listening, right, every day, Tom, Dick or Harry, working a corporate job, looking to maybe start their 6 a.m. morning routine and gym, and kick off their next life of productivity and health and fitness. What's the best tips for people to get a restorative sleep?
The best things that you can do. So if you were to look at a couple of pillars here. So number one is you want the room to be completely dark. So if you've got street lights coming in, block them out. Get a blackout curtain. If you've got lights on inside your room, if you've got lights coming underneath the door, get rid of them. Block them off. Don't have LEDs on in the room. Like I'm talking, even if you've got like a charger charging a camera in the corner, no light. If you are able to see your hands in front of your face while you're about to go to sleep, it is too bright inside your room. It should be black. That's number one. Number two, temperature control. You want to make sure that your room is cold. We need to get cold so we'll fall into a nice, deep, restful sleep. We can't sleep whilst we're too hot. So anywhere from that kind of 16 to 19 degrees C is kind of where most people find they're going to get the most deep and rested sleep. So make sure your room is temperature controlled in a way. If you're sleeping in a 25-degree room every night and something disturbs you, you'll wake up because you're just sitting on that fence of being asleep and not being asleep.
So that's what it is with temperature control. You might be in a sleep, but any disturbances, you're more likely to wake up because you're just on the cusp.
Exactly. And interesting. Same thing with sound. Like you might be on the cusp, or you'll go through these waves of sleep. You'll go through deep sleep. You'll go through some theta. You'll go through some light phases of sleep. If you're sleeping on a road that's used semi-regularly, and you're going through at say 2 a.m. in the morning, a light phase of sleep, and you have a car come down the road loud and it wakes you out of sleep, your sleep is hampered by, give it a percentage, 5% maybe. Maybe you're 5% less recovered the next day because you've woken up because of the car. So instead, make sure it's quiet. And if you don't have the luxury of, blocking out the sound from the road, find a really good set of earmuffs that are going to not disrupt your sleep, but are going to block out those sounds of, the cat's fighting next door, or the dog's barking, or the car coming down the road. That's going to be an added benefit. Another thing is make sure your room is completely clean. So no mess, no bowls or plates or cups or clothes on the ground. Make sure your room is like a clean sanctuary, because regardless of whether it stresses you out in the moment, mess is stress. And you don't want to be in a stressful environment while you're trying to go to sleep. If you're going to sleep kicking shoes out the way and things aren't clean, that's not a place where you want to be. So that's another thing that I would always recommend. Another thing, if you just wanted to add a little bonus onto that, if you could put in some air purifying plants into your room, that's a great idea too. Some aloe vera or some mother-in-law's tongue or something like that. That's really good air purifying plant. That would be great.
So basically making your bedroom a place where you just go to sleep.
Yes.
Other activities are, I've recently started like not charging my phone in my room. I leave it out in the living room now because I was falling into this trap. I swear by my morning routine, like alarm goes off at 5:45 and I'm normally in bed by like 9:45, 10. But when I had my phone in the room on charge, I'd be doom scrolling for like half an hour. And then I'd be awake because of the blue light. And from day one, me leaving my phone in the living room, not only am I getting half an hour to 45 more minutes sleep back, but I'm also falling to sleep quicker and deeper because I'm not having that blue light exposure later to my bedtime, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that's another crucial part. These are another couple of, accessories to the training. Again, the blue light, like shut it off, like after, 6:30 p.m., either put some blue light blockers on or, figure out a way that you don't look at screens in some fashion. The other thing that you'd really want to do is get into a nighttime routine. Just like your morning routine, nighttime routines are a really good way to start training your body to start releasing the right hormones to drop into a nice deep restful sleep. So just like you would with a baby or a child, it's like it's bath time, then it's put your pajamas on, and then it's like we're going to bed. So for an adult, you might say, okay, at 7 p.m., all the lights in the house go off. All of the lights go off. Like every light, if you want to walk around and you need to see something, put on a torch on your phone so you can get around and see, but all the lights go off, and then your brain starts to go, okay, we're starting to wind down. Then the next thing you do is you have a couple of, squares of chocolate. That might be one thing that you like to do each night. And then you have a cup of tea, you read a book, you go to bed. Whatever your nighttime routine is, or you listen to an audio book or whatever it may be, start to get in a habitual routine and that'll start winding you down better. And then your time to fall asleep will start to become quicker. If you're the type of person that sits and stares at the ceiling for 20 minutes before you fall asleep, there's likely something contributing to that, and you should be under 10.
If I'm a guy, which I am, but I'm trying to gym a lot and build muscle, build lean muscle, put some mass on, maybe build strength, and I'm going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. Equally, if I'm someone overweight and I'm trying to lose weight and I'm on a diet, both those goals are very different. How much, if I'm following everything else, like if I'm going to the gym, I'm eating, I'm hydrating, how much will poor sleep affect my goal of putting on muscle or losing weight in the other scenario?
Look, I think sleep plays a really integral role, but not only for the fact of that's where you're going to build the muscle that you've triggered a response in the gym, right? And then you're fueling it with the fuel and nutrition you're putting in. But then all the good work, all the recovery, all of the building of proteins and the hormone creation and everything that you need is happening while you go to sleep for the most part. Not only is it going to help with that and heighten that, but it's also going to help you stay more consistent with the goal. That is part of it, because if you're a sleepy, tired person all the time, your likelihood of sticking to the plan and being consistent is also hampered. And I think that is the number one key factor here is you are a better person when you get proper sleep. And when you make better decisions, you make more rational decisions. You don't make as many emotional decisions when you get good sleep. So I would say inadvertently, it contributes in many ways, way more important than just getting the 7 to 9 hours of sleep, depending on who you are and what you like. It'll play a better role in keeping you consistent in the long-term goal. That's probably where you're going to see the biggest factors play out.
For sure. And then, okay, so we've got sleep, we've ticked off sleep, and then what would you say is the next most important one? We're talking about your Ironman prep, but also we're just talking in general, kind of like wellness functions and things that people should have in their lives.
Well, I've got this sneaking suspicion that two things on a regular day-to-day basis for people that are training for the next Hyrox. I would say the next thing is your nutrition. You need to take care of your nutrition, and that means taking care of the gut. The study on the gut has played such a role in the way that I've shaped my business, shaped the way that I train, shaped the way that I eat these days. I think that would be the next thing for people that are just training, looking to recover or heighten their recovery ability, making sure you're eating enough food of quality with as much diversity as you can. Now, for the Ironman recovery side of things, I think the one thing that contributed next after sleep to help me recover was the movement. Now, I think the movement, the cycling every day, the getting outside and going for the walk down to the beach and getting in the ocean. So the activity was the one thing. Sorry, I've got my phone's connected to my computer. People are calling me like crazy. But I should have just disconnected it. But I haven't.
You're a wanted man. You're a business owner, of course.
That's okay. But I would say the movement is what sped up the healing of the injury. That was the one thing that I looked back on and thought, you know what? If I had to do one thing that really heightened or sped up this recovery, it was movement. And I now can see how that's actually played out, and it's been confirmed and cemented for me in so many other scenarios that the Ironman just brought out. I remember some times where, I had a sore shoulder from playing footy on the weekend, and I was like, oh man, I think I've hurt my rotator cuff somehow, somewhere in the back of my shoulders, killing me. And I take a week off lifting weights because it hurts too much. And then, the next week rolls around and my mates want to train and go lift weights. And they're just like, come on, man, you got to come train. I was like, my shoulder's still no better. And they're just like, come on, let's just go in and start lifting weights and just kind of like push through the pain a bit. And then it comes really good because I'm getting it moving and getting it active and getting blood flow in there and getting it strong again. And I saw this play out so many more times. I think the action of movement, when you are to take away the thing that we do on a daily basis, everything slows down. I think the rate of healing is sped up with the action of movement. And I think that is what next best help the injury. But yeah, two different things there, but they would be pretty much on par. But in the two different scenarios, if I get an injury or I get a niggle or something like that, my goal is not to rest the thing. My goal is to make that thing, depending on what it is, stronger again. And if it's like a tendon, it's put load through the tendon isometrically or statically, like just sit there and take tension into it. If I've got, if I hurt myself, I had a broken wrist, the idea is to get back to movement as quick as possible. Nothing that's going to hurt it or prolong the healing, but just get blood flow in there, get nutrients in there. And then again, come down to the food, fill yourself with good nutrients.
So about the, I think that's great points on the movement, and for myself, very interesting because I always pick up these niggles. Lots of people listening will be doing Hyrox or CrossFit or just fitness in their everyday lives, and you often hear people having to pull up. Me myself, it's funny we're having this conversation. I've had to pull out the running for like 4 weeks now because of a swollen toe joint, which is probably one of the most pathetic injuries you could pick up from playing touch rugby, and so I'm slowly easing back into the running again, but like it wasn't to a doctor, it was to the physio. And I've been doing all the like rehab exercises with the towel crunches and all that kind of boring stuff that you don't want to be doing. But let's dive into the diet side. Can you let us know how long have you been fully plant-based now?
So I had that, it's coming up to 6 years. I had that bike accident when did I have the bike accident?
2019, was it? No.
Yes, it was.
Around
there? Yeah, it was it was October 2019. I want to say it was right near my birthday because it was 5 weeks out from the Ironman, and that was on the 2nd of December, I think, from memory. So I went fully vegan about 3 weeks prior to that.
And what was your thought process behind going fully vegan?
Well, for me, it has actually always been on my mind. I actually did it in 2013 for about 6 months, maybe a little bit less, 4 or 5 months. And it was always because I've always been an animal lover. And I thought to myself for so many years, if I love these animals so much, how am I able to go out and just pay for someone to cause discomfort or frustration or sadness to another living being? Like, how can I do that? And I'm not a one of those pushy, in your face, outspoken vegans by any means. Like, each to their own. Everybody can make their own choice. This is a personal choice for myself. But I had to ask myself that a few times back in 2013, and then I think my own selfishness, I guess you'd call it, would be at a point where I would drive past trucks of cattle and sheep and chickens, and I'd have to look the other way because I felt so bad because I knew where they were going. I knew it was going to happen, and I would still yet go to the supermarket and be so detached from what the packaged beef would be, and the packaged chicken would be, and the packaged fish would be, and you're detached because it doesn't look like the thing that it comes from. So for me, I had to do a bit of deep-seated thinking, and eventually I just got to the point in 2019 where I just thought, you know what, I'm not prepared to put money into the industry that does these things to sentient beings that feel all these feelings and feel scared and feel pain and feel sadness and feel lonely, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just not going to contribute to it. I'm not going to put money into it. I'm not going to support it, and I'm going to do that to myself, and I'm not going to be outspoken about doing it. And that was my number one reason. It was not a health reason. It was not a performance reason. It was not anything else other than I just felt like it was something that I needed to do because I could not bring myself to inflict suffering on something else. That makes sense.
I really respect that, and I say from all your content, there's nothing like shoved in people's face about you being a vegan, but I have seen a lot of comments on your videos, and ones that do mention you being plant-based have been super supportive, and it's great that we've got an elite athlete who's vegan and plant-based, because it's not really something you associate with elite performance, especially physical performance? I know Lewis Hamilton is plant-based and his at F1, and yes, that's physical, but you're not lifting a shitload of weight and pushing you're pushing your body to the limits, but in very different ways. So how has the sort of turning vegan, has that affected your kind of like strength and output in any way, or your training in general?
You know, that's the most common question that I get, and I can honestly say it has not impacted me better or worse. I'm exactly the same. It hasn't made me better. It has not made me worse. It is honestly identical to the day before I went vegan. I'm exactly the same. I think the progression that I took in terms of getting stronger, getting faster, which I am now, like even like what people would say my peak would have been, my peak, you know, strength and ability and athleticness would have been, you know, 27, 28 years old. I am better now than I was back then. And I think regardless of whether I was still an omnivore during this period from then to now, I think it would have been the same. Like it probably would have been close to similar. And you know, the only thing that I think would have hampered my progression to going from then to now is if I went carnivore. I don't think it would have any benefit at all. Whereas being either completely plant-based or omnivorous, I think I would have just held the same progression. I think if I went carnivore, I would have taken a step back in the wrong direction.
In what ways?
I think that if I went completely carnivore, I would have not been able to output the type of athletic consistency that I have been able to. Like with the lack of carbohydrates, the lack of antioxidants.
So when you say, sorry, just for my understanding, when you say carnivore, is that completely, what do you call it? Meats and no veggies and okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, like, if I just went completely down
one extreme to the other.
Yeah. I think that would have been bad. But I think in terms of, in terms of progress and supporting athleticism and supporting health, omnivore or plant-based, take your pick, and it's probably no different, especially if you do it in the right way. And what I consumed myself with in the beginning when I did turn plant-based and I just went completely plant-based and I just took out the beef and the chicken and the fish and I replaced it with nuts and seeds, legumes, you know, tofu, tempeh, black beans, lentils. When I replaced those for those, it was not about getting the protein from the meat. It was just about getting the protein from the plants. And the number is the number. Whether I get 150 grams of protein from animal-based or I get 150 grams from plant-based, and you know, people will say, okay, cool, but along with that 150 grams of protein, you also have to, you know, take on board a lot more carbohydrates. You have to take on a lot more fat. And it's like, good. Great. I need it anyway.
Yeah, look how much I train.
I'm training a lot. Like, yeah, I've got to do it. And I also do believe that we don't need as much protein as what we've probably, you know, in the bodybuilding days, back when I was playing football, I was trying to consume like 220 grams of protein. I'm probably having on the better part, on most days, 150 to 170 grams of protein a day.
How much do you weigh?
89 kilos.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm massively overshooting protein intake if that is the case.
Yeah, like, and I feel good. Like, if I felt bad, if I felt lack of energy, if I felt like something was wrong, I would change it. I would up the protein. I would make sure I'm getting in all my nutrients. I would go get a blood test and check out my levels and just make sure I'm, you know, not deficient in anything. But I'm not. Like, the thing is, I've had those things done, and I think the only thing I was slightly low in was iodine, and so I top up on a bit of iodine every few days. So that's kind of like where I was at. I was like, I don't need meat, I need protein. That was the key. I don't need meat, I need protein. And as long as I supported the effort that I was putting into training each week, that was the key. When I train a lot less, I eat less. When I train a lot more, I eat a lot more. And aside from the protein is like, that is the number one. That's the number one macronutrient that I would focus on. Make sure you get in that protein. Sure, that's number one. Outside of that, diversity is the key. Like, and what I'm looking for in diversity is like, I want to get at least 30 different types of plants in each week. That was what I was talking about before. That what consumed me was the amount of plant variance in the week. So that plant variance could be like, I might eat rice 12 times a week. I might eat cabbage 2 times a week. I might eat lentils and 5 times a week. But across those 3 different items, there's 3 different plants. I want to get 30 different types in per week. And as long as those plants then afford me to output as much energy, so making sure I'm getting in enough fat and carbohydrate to output the energy that I need for the week, great, job is done. And I think what happens, and what we're learning so much, and this is how I've kind of intuitively come to this conclusion, because I've gone through bouts of feeling really good and I've gone through bouts of feeling a little bit lackluster, is when I eat variety, I feel better. And that's it. And what I can put that down to is variety on my plate creates variety in my gut. And if my gut is functioning well, I'm in a good place. And I can output the athletic potential that I need to go and run and train and play and surf and do all these things that I want to do and, compete on the highest level I possibly can. That's what I'm looking for. And all I would say on top of that, when you to go look for those, 30 plus types of plants, if you can shoot for 40, great. If you've got more, even better. But, add some lentils and beans in every day, add some sprouts in every day, add in some mushrooms every day, and add in something fermented every day, whether that's sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, something fermented every single day. And you'll crush it. Like that'll be ace. And if you're lackluster in, B12, take plenty of omnivores. Take a supplement. It's, plenty of omnivores and plenty of carnivores are deficient in stuff too. Like it really just depends on where you're getting your produce from and then how much you're eating. And, people will say that, plant-based are, typically deficient in particular types of things. But again, all my friends are omnivores and probably guarantee that they are too.
For sure. I mean, if anyone gets their blood work done, they're probably going to be deficient in something, right? It's not, unless you're spot on, but
very rare.
It's very rare. And super interesting hearing about that, because diet and nutrition is so paramount to everything we do, whether you're an athlete or an office worker or corporate, whatever. When you talk about your gut there, I always hear the buzzwords like gut microbiome. Can you just kind of like summarize exactly what that means? When you talk about a healthy gut, what exactly are you talking about?
Yeah, so we have microbiomes everywhere. We have a mouth microbiome, we have a skin microbiome, we have a gut microbiome. Essentially what it is, it's an ecosystem of bacteria. And what we're looking to do, especially with our gut microbiome, is we don't want, you've probably heard of probiotics, and probiotics are beneficial bacteria, things that will consume fiber or polyphenols, and they will spit out these things called postbiotics. So these gut bacteria essentially are consuming these fibers that are indigestible for, like, as a human, we don't have enzymes to break down these fibers, but the gut bugs love them. They will feed on them and they will give us back things. So they will essentially, they're a little factory or a shopping center for hormones, enzymes, amino acids. They'll create vitamins. They'll create short chain fatty acids, things that are good for the gut lining. That basically, they're a little station to help us as a host be healthy. And our aim is to make sure that our gut microbiome is as robust as possible. So if you were to think of, say, people like to use the analogy, the Amazon rainforest and a desert. If you were to look at the desert, it's barren, it's got sand, it's got maybe a couple of cactus. That is a really variety lacking place to be. Whereas if you look at the Amazon rainforest, it's got birds, it's got worms, it's got, soil rich bugs, it's got lots of different plant material, and it's thriving. That's the type of thing that we want in our gut microbiome. Now, over the course of years, when you're born, you get given this gut microbiome from your mum, and it happens when you're born, and you come out and you've got all this stuff from birth that goes into your mouth and it goes down into your stomach, and it essentially is the starting point of the bacteria getting started, propagated in the gut microbiome. Now, let's just say you start off with 1,000 species of gut bacteria in the gut, and over the course of 20 years, you cull a few because they don't get fed, or they go into hibernation, like you're not feeding them particular fibers and other bits and pieces, and they die off. let's say you go through a couple of rounds of antibiotics and it kills some more. By the time you're 20, you've now got 600 species of gut bacteria. Now your station or your shopping center or your manufacturer of postbiotics and enzymes and short chain fatty acids is now only 600. It's not 1,000 anymore. So every time you lose gut bacteria, you're minimizing the amount of cool postbiotics that your body can make. So the idea to feed or to water the ecosystem is to get as much diversity and different fibers and polyphenols and polysaccharides into the gut microbiome as we can to feed it so it thrives. And we just don't want one overpowering species, right? And this is typically why most people will say, eat local and eat fresh, because as you go through the seasons of eating local, you will get, dark leafy greens in the winter and you'll get summery fruits in the summer and spring. And then you'll be feeding different types of fibers to different types of gut microbiome and different types of bacteria in the gut. So you're not feeding just one set all the time and getting them to be really strong and the other ones to be really weak. Because once they take the space, it's hard for them to take the space back. So the idea that we can, use probiotic supplements to seed or propagate new bacteria, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're transient. Maybe they go in and they do a job and they leave. We don't really know yet. It's kind of all still up in the air, but this is a lot of the stuff that we're working on with my company. So we're kind of like diving deep into the fermentation and the gut bacteria and how can we help gut microbiomes be healthier so we can be more athletic, because what we know is if our gut functions really, really well and it's really robust and really strong, we're more hardy to tough times. Like when we go out and we train hard, we can bounce back from sessions better, we can recover better. The factory is churning out short chain fatty acids left, right, and center. It's creating amino acids for us. It's doing the right stuff, and we're healthy and we're happy and we're vibrant. And again, if we're doing all of that and then combining that with sleep, which also affects the gut microbiome, and stress, which also affects the gut microbiome, then we can maximize our potential. And the idea is to go and win world championships. That's what we want to go. We want to go out and win races, and we want to have fun. So, you got to take care of your gut. And what we know is diversity is key on the plate and in the gut.
I knew you were the right person to ask that question.
I'm glad you asked.
That is probably the best explanation of gut microbiome I've ever heard on the internet ever. So thank you for that. I love the picture of the Amazon rainforest. It's like visual learner over here. Super clear what we're trying to do with the gut microbiome. I'm
glad.
When we've got time for a few more questions, if you don't mind. Well, I really did want to touch on content in this chat, so I'll try and touch on that a bit quickly, because I've got some classic questions at the end with like Hyrox and CrossFit and thoughts on the different athletes.
I love it.
The content stuff, I'm selfishly very interested in because I'm doing it myself. What's your YouTube is very, very engaging, very organic, authentic. Your Instagram's great following, very authentic. How important is your content strategy in your business, personal brand, life journey? Talk us about your content.
Yeah, so content's a funny one, and content is, at the moment in terms of business and work and outside of, a couple of key crucial things that are high priority, content sits at the very top. Content for my business is the main priority for me, like creating great content, because that's essentially what the backbone of good businesses are. And then obviously if you want to be an athlete these days, unless you've got a kick-ass business in the background, you need content to be engaging. So, you can get help and aid when you want to go races overseas. It's a very expensive thing to do. So content is super high priority. Now, the strategy behind the content for the business, it evolves so rapidly. We pivot so often. We're starting to find ourselves a bit of a niche now, but we've been pivoting for the last 2 years on what we think is a good strategy for content. So you're never going to get it right straight away. You'll sit down and you create a great strategy and be like, this is where we're going. And a month later, you'll be like, we need to slightly redirect, and you need to be good at doing that. And that's fine. You can do it. But once you start to hone in and lock in on what you want to do, lock in tight. For us, just for instance, this is just putting it in play. For Fiber, which is my plant-based supplement brand, our idea is to highlight the stories of people going out and training and racing. We want to help fuel and support people that love to train, love to race, and love to look after their gut microbiome. That's it. And if we can show people doing inspiring things and tell the story about the next race and tell the story about this person who went from, running a 2.5K run and is now running a marathon, that is where we want to be. So we're here to help fuel, we're here to help inspire and educate. That's what we do. And if each post or each thing that we can put out is to help inspire the next training session, to help educate on the next best thing to put in your gut, or the next cool story that's going to get you off the couch to go and be active and be healthy and, maybe go and play some sport, we're doing that. And then every now and again, you'll chuck in, a cool deal that's going down, or you want to tell them about some product that's cool, chuck it in from time to time. Now, for my personal brand, this is what I will always say to people. Like, when I look at mine and Lauren's YouTube, if I look at the YouTube together, if you were to think about a business idea and say, I want to start a business in this, and I'm going to get it perfect before I launch it, you'll never launch it. Mm-hmm. Same with the YouTube. If I'm going to start a YouTube channel, but it needs to be edited perfectly, it needs to have captions and subtitles, and it needs to be flawless, you'll never get it started and you won't be consistent. At the moment, we are just filming stuff and it's not all on the camera. Like, we have a couple of cameras that we use, but we also film a lot of it on our phones. And I had to get okay with the fact that it wasn't going to be perfect. That's what I had to get okay with. I would rather get a business off the ground and started and fix it on the fly, same with the YouTube channel, and fix it on the fly, than never do it at all. And that's pretty much how I attack everything. I will attack everything with reckless abandon and fix it as I go. Otherwise, it's not going to get started. That's pretty much it. And you will pivot so many times that that perfect thing that you created in the beginning is now not perfect because you're not even going down that direction anymore.
I love that. Attack it with reckless abandon. That's a great say.
Just start, just film yourself and get it up.
It's some of the scariest parts, right? Is that first step is YouTube editing takes me a long time. But again, because I'm similar to you in the sense of my quality needs to be high enough for me to be happy to post it. And I did one last week where I started editing and I was thinking to myself, this is a shit video. And because it was my own fault, I had taken the time to film properly and I didn't really have a storyline, but all I'm filming is my own life. And in the end, I didn't post the video. I posted a camera, me talking to the camera and saying, I was going to post this video, but it was a shit video. Here's the lessons that I've learned from how fucking hard YouTube is and how hard being a content creator is.
That's great.
But that's,
I love it.
That's raw content, and, but I love that. Just starting, and as I said, I'm a big fan of your content. So if you haven't checked it out, check out James's YouTube. It's great. It's great dinner time watch. You put it up, you get tucked into dinner, you watch a nice day in the life or week in the life.
Yeah. We've got some rough sessions. We've got some rough sessions on the next YouTube coming up. It's me and the absolute Hurt Locker. There's a little sneak peek coming up tonight on my Instagram.
Is there? Class. Well, you rub shoulders with some absolute animals. So the sessions that you guys must get up to, I don't even want to think what they're like.
Yeah, the one on the weekend was pretty bad. I'm still feeling it.
Speaking of then, like to finish off a couple like CrossFit versus Hyrox questions. Who do you think are the better athletes, CrossFitters or Hyroxers?
It's just plainly CrossFitters. They are plain and simple. And in terms of being an athlete, if you were to look at athlete, okay, there are some seriously fit dudes, and cardiovascularly, the top of the spectrum, Hyroxers are cardiovascularly fitter than the CrossFitters. 100%. I agree with that. I guess we have to look at definitions, and we have to figure out what we define as an athlete. And for me, if I was not to spend time sitting down and writing what I think the ultimate definition of an athlete is, I would just think to myself, who is the most capable person out of the two? And if shit hits the fan, who would I want by my side to help me do an unknown task? I don't know what the task is. I'm going to have to pick someone who can do pretty much everything and do it well. So I'd probably pick a CrossFitter, because I know they're fit, they can hold their own in the fitness realm. I know that they're mentally strong. I know that they're physically very strong. Like, what happens if we have to, pick up, big heavy bags of this thing and move it from A to B? And, I've chosen the Hyrox athlete who, he might be not as strong. Like, I think in terms of athlete, like, again, I'm not saying that Hyroxes are weak by any means, because they are very strong. They are very good. Like, they're very good. But the most capable, I would say, would be the CrossFit athlete, the most capable. And that is going back down to the definition of fitness. If you just look at the definition of fitness, it's like you want to be capable and you want to be able to be good in every domain, and not just good in every domain, but really good in every domain. Like, you're deadlifting 250 plus kilos, you're back squatting 200 plus kilos, you're running a 5-minute, 5:20 mile. Like, the difference between running a say, I think Ricky Garrard, for instance, he ran a 4:45 mile. Maybe the top Hyroxes are running a, 4:15 mile. But Ricky can deadlift 260 or 250 and he can back squat 200. Like, if I had him with me, if he runs, 20 seconds slower in a mile, but he can squat double the weight of the next guy, then I'll probably want him, because in case we have to squat really heavy or, do something like that, whatever it may be. So I would say that would be my reason as to why. But VO2, lactic threshold, like, hands down, the Hyrox athlete's going to take the cake. They're that much more specific in those realms, and they will take the cake there. But it's not to say one is better than the other. They're just both very good at whatever they do. But in terms of capability, I'd say the CrossFitter has an edge.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. It's I've seen so many like comment sections of videos like comparing Hyrox and CrossFit, and I just find it so funny how people get so triggered on this question.
Yeah, but hey, the Hyroxes are they're way better runners. Like,
for sure.
The Elite 15 versus, let's say you take the Elite 15 from Hyrox and the top 15 from the CrossFit Games, and you put them all in a 10K run together, I could guarantee that 1 through 15 would be all Hyrox athletes. And 16 through 30 would be CrossFitters. Done. Yeah. That's how it'll work.
Yeah. But if that's the specific challenge, right? Exactly. But I just find it funny. I find it funny, the comparison. But there's so many like comparisons within the sport we could go down. We won't today, but in terms of like Hyrox being a threat to CrossFit, the different communities, the accessibility, like there's so much stuff. Ultimately, I think they're both great because they're just getting people into activity and fitness and getting people moving. So, you can spam the comments in these different sections and argue against each other, two different communities, but I think they're both great and they're getting people moving. They're both got pretty low barriers to entry. Like, you can go down to your local CrossFit gym and just join in. You don't have to do all the clean and jerks and all that sort of stuff.
No, you're spot on. And I think that's the key. And I think the key is that they're both getting people up off the couch and getting them moving, because, like, who wants to sit on their couch for the rest of their life? Like, we've got this beautiful world that we can go and play in. You might as well be capable to go and play. Like, that's the thing. Or even if you don't like playing, at least you could go and travel and see things. And to do that, you need to be physically capable to a degree.
I mean, you couldn't even sit down once you'd broken your back for 10 days. So you're speaking to the right guy here.
Yeah. So they definitely have. They both have pros, and I think both of the communities are great. And I think what is fascinating about Hyrox is people can go and compete, and it's very low barrier to entry. You can go and have a race, and if you're physically capable enough to get around a kilometer track, 8 times in any fashion, you can go and do it, and you can go and race and have a good time with some friends. That's the appealing part of it. And you don't have to walk on your hands, and you don't have to do snatches, and you don't have to go through this rigorous training process to do the basics, right?
Yeah. So James, as you know, the name of the podcast is Abnormal, and it's for normal people that want to do abnormal things. And we ask the same question to the guests as the last question in the interview, conversation. And if you were to give one piece of advice to someone out there listening who wants to do something abnormal in their lives, what would it be?
I would say, if you want to do something There's a few things that I would say. If you want to do something completely abnormal, number one, you have to train yourself to be, you have to train yourself to not be understood. You need to understand that no one will understand you. The things that you are going for, people will not relate to, and you have to be okay with that. Because if you're looking for validation from, every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the road about this really cool, abnormal thing, they're going to be like, why are you doing that? And they'll want to tear you down. So have conviction in what you're doing and be okay with not being understood. That's number one. Then I would say number two would be the most consistent worker at that craft, and you will do really well. If you're consistent in the process, you will do very well. Most people lack consistency before anything else. They might have a great goal, they might have a great ambition, but if you are unable to be focused in on a particular task for a long period of time, you probably won't achieve anything abnormal. And I would say the last thing is be okay with not having balance. Be okay with not having balance, because anything abnormal or anything crazy out of this world achievable, typically the people that achieve those things, I don't think in any case that I've ever heard of, the person had balance in their life. There was no balance. You look at all the greats of any sport, or all the greats that, achieved, crazy inventions or did the next best thing. Tell me where their balance is. It's very rare to find, but dig in deep and enjoy the process, enjoy the journey of what you're doing. Be consistent, be okay with not being relatable, and be okay with not having balance. If you want to go for something, go for it hard and just sink your teeth into it. And, it's, just enjoy that in it. I think that's probably my main three.
Love it, man. That's you got me pumped up. You got the hairs on my arms all stacking up. I'm going to go for a run after this, mate.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Great advice, great chat. Really, really enjoyed that, and good luck in the next Hyrox. Good luck in the World Champs. I cannot wait to follow you from afar and see what you're up to next, and maybe in a year's time we can do another check-in and sort of catch up on your Hyrox journey and everything in between. I really, really loved hammering into the details on this. So thank you for getting all nerdy and scientific with me to explain those concepts. Really appreciate that. Thank you for your time, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Pete. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.